This is the Boston Sports podcast that brings you all things Boston sports with Joe and Shawn. Today is August 2nd, 2014. I'm Shawn Klein, and my co host is Joe Danker. What's up, Joe?
Shawn, what's going on, my friend?
Just recovering from the hectic, crazy, chaotic trade deadline, one of the busiest that I can remember.
The craziest that I can recall.
Interesting.
Wow, a lot went on. It seemed like the Red Sox were like at the at the center of it all in many ways, with the amount of players that they dealt out and the notoriety of the players.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, definitely. They moved a lot of players and a lot, but there were a lot of other players being moved, a lot of other big moves. I think, Detroit's move to pick up Price is pretty interesting. Uh,
Huge. Oh yeah.
it's huge. I mean, the thing is about that. I mean, it's not a Boston sports thing, although they're a potential uh, rival or competitor. Not this year, but in future years. And is that they didn't really address their main problem, which is their bullpen. I mean, they have good starting pitching already. They added another great starting pitcher, but they still have shit for a bullpen. So, unless they
Hmm.
are thinking of when the playoffs come, one of these guys they can use for, bullpen action or hoping that they go, 8, 9 innings and can complete games or whatever because that seems to be that was Detroit's problem against us last year. It seems to be their problem still this year. So they haven't really addressed it. And bringing in David Price doesn't really address that. I mean, he's a great pitcher, and I was kind of hoping that maybe the Red Sox would move for him, although I didn't think there was any way Tampa Bay would trade with the Red Sox. Certainly a piece like David Price, but um,
No, not into in the same in the division.
no,
No
not
way.
not such a big player. So I didn't really think that was realistic, but you can dream. But so that was a big move, and outside of that, I mean, there were a lot of other moves, but certainly the Red Sox were the talk of the trade deadline. So obviously Lester. So we were wrong. Both of us thought that, at least in the last podcast we did, that we'd get the deal done, but we didn't, and he's gone. So what are your thoughts?
Um. Well, first of all, upset that he's gone. Not to the extent of when, let's say, Roger Clemens wasn't re-signed back in 97, 96. That I think I actually cried when that happened, Shawn.
Yeah,
Roger Clemens was my, as I was growing up in the mid late 80s, early 90s, was my hero as a Red Sox fan.
sure.
And Pedro, well, when Pedro left, that was a little bit different. We made a pretty good offer to him, and he had his best years with us. He had some great years in Montreal too, but we got a lot out of Pedro. We won a
Yeah,
championship, and it was I don't know if it was a mutual pardon, but Pedro went for the extra years. Um, so
and he didn't do anything
it
after
wasn't
that.
like that, but no, he really didn't, and I
Yeah,
think that was a really good call. And I want to get into more about the decision-making process and a little bit what we talked about the other day on the phone, Shawn. The past couple of years, the operational philosophy, financial operational philosophy of the Red Sox upper management. I
yeah.
think that definitely deserves some discussion and what you and I think about that because I've been thinking more and more about it for the past few days, and I'm displeased with it. But we get into that. But as far as Lester leaving, it's not to the extent of those guys because he wasn't the pitcher that he isn't the pitcher that they were.
No,
But that being said, did he won us. He was instrumental. He was instrumental in two championships. He was actually with the organization when we
yep.
won in 2004. I don't think he was with the big ball club, or was he?
I
Was he
think it
still a minor
was.
leaguer then?
No, I think he
With the
was.
big, with the big, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe, yeah, okay. But
Well,
2007 and
no, maybe not.
2013,
No, I don't think he was there in '04.
okay. Because I
No.
don't remember him being a big part of the team, if at all. But I know 2002 is when he was with the organization. Um, so with that being said, I'm upset that he left because he was the closest thing we've had to a Page or a Clemens on the Red Sox in the years since. And frankly, he's done more for the organization. Well, that's hard to say, but winning the championships, Lester really has been huge, and he is nails. He has balls of steel when it comes to pitching in the postseason. He's turned in some inconsistent regular seasons, but you know what? He goes out there, he throws 200 innings. Um, he's never done anything off the field that you could. In fact, he's been a white knight off the field, beating cancer, saying all the right things. So to lose a player of that caliber, not a top elite pitcher in the American League in the major leagues, but just a notch below, a really good guy, a really good pitcher. It's a tough loss, and I'm sad about it. So that's my emotional initial reaction. What do you think about that?
No, I agree with a lot of that. He was, as you said, so important to those championship teams. Now, granted, he didn't do it himself, right? I mean, it's a team. There's a lot of other pieces that are involved there, but he was an important part, and he pitched important games, and he pitched well in those games. Can't take can't not You can't not take that into account. Uh, and he's a guy that was well loved around the city. Uh, he was a figure. He was a face of the Red Sox in a lot of ways. Certainly a leader or becoming a leader um, of the team, and so that was important. And I think it is a loss. It's certainly not a pitcher or a guy that you're going to be easy to replace. And and because he came up in the organization, he's the first guy drafted by the new ownership and came up through the organization. They developed him. And so you'd like to see a guy like that, particularly because he expressed the desire to stay. You'd like to see him stay and finish out his career here. So, yeah, I mean, and I texted you that I was sad.
Right.
It was kind of sad. And the thing that is sad about it, I mean, all these other things we're talking about are partly what's sad. You're disappointed as a fan and so on. But it's also disappointing because it just seems like a deal was there to be had that was reasonable, that wasn't going to break this organizational philosophy, that they could have got it done without having to go really against what I take to be their the signing philosophy. And so that's the disappointing thing, is that they could have got it done and they didn't. And that's what I would have liked to have had. I would have liked to see him stay. I mean, we got this guy Cepedes, who I think will be a star. I think he'll be. I mean, he's not going to be a star like Big Poppy or and so on. But I think he's going to be a guy who is going to help the organization be better next year for sure. I do think that he seems like he's a good bat. He's going to provide some protection for Poppy, and that's going to be important. And I think also, again, for Poppy is someone else who's of Latin American origin, um,
Sure.
speaking the language more closely. So someone I think Poppy can feel more comfortable with, and I think that will help. So I don't know much about him personality wise. Is he, or clubhouse wise, is he a bad boy, or is he a clubhouse guy? Is he a quiet, just hard worker? I don't really know. I mean, he's put up good numbers. He's won the home run derby 2 years in a row, I guess. So, he's an all-star,
Yeah.
obviously. So he's obviously got the skills, and in a park that it looks like he should hit really really well. So I think speaks well to him. Now, I one of the things though was that you know, in some ways, I'm more sad as a fan, just as a pure fan, not from really like a baseball perspective, but just as a fan, I'm more upset about Johnny Gomes going than Lester. I mean, Lester's a great pitch.
What?
No, that's why I
You
said,
texted me that. I thought
yeah,
you were kidding.
no, no. I mean,
You
obviously not,
serious?
not obviously not on a baseball level, right? Lester's much more important to the team than Gomes was. But just as a pure fan, I just Gomes just was so much fun to watch play. I mean, he's such a character, and I loved his passion for the game. I love his passion for Boston and for the Red Sox. All of that just was I just really enjoyed that. Whereas Lester was just, more a consummate professional. You never really saw his personality. I mean, I don't really know what Lester's like. I mean, yeah, he does some great things for the community, and that's all good. But whatever. He's not a personality to me. I mean, Lester's, that's why I say it's not a baseball thing. Obviously, from a baseball thing, Lester is way more important. Gomes is a journeyman outfielder. I mean, he's good, but he's not. He's a guy who's gonna every couple of years is gonna be on a different team. That's just the nature of his where he's at. But I just loved
Right.
him on the team. I mean, he was the image in so many ways, or at least one of the images of that the 013, whatever, 2013 World Series championships. I mean, when you think of that, you're going to think of Johnny Gomes. You're going to think of him placing the World Series trophy on the finish line in Boston for the marathon. You're going to think of his helmet and just his craziness and his crazy ugly beard. I just think those images were so personal to me and so much a connection I had more with him. And then there was the joke that you and I had because uh,
Yeah.
on an earlier
Garden
pod,
gnomes.
yeah, the garden gnomes thing. Because on an earlier podcast on the Sports Ethicist podcast, I misspoke and said gnomes, and so that became a personal joke between you and I. And so whenever he was up, we text each other gnomes, and it was fun. And so I'm gonna miss that, and I'm gonna miss him on the team. So just as a fan thing, obviously not from a baseball thing, like I said, but because Lester, like I said, he's a great pitcher. I would have liked to preferred to have them have a deal done as long as it was a reasonable deal. And so, but I didn't feel like a personal connection to Lester. That and
Okay.
like you were saying with Pedro and and Clemens and Pop. I mean, these are guys that you really feel like a personal connection with, and I never felt that with Lester. I mean, I admire him,
Mm,
respected him,
mm,
the courage and resilience that he had to fight back from lymphoma and to get back in and play. And pitch the
yeah.
way he has. I mean, obviously, greatest respect for what he's done,
Right.
and admiration. But I just he wasn't a guy that I like.
You
I
didn't
don't.
love him. You didn't have
Yeah.
any. You didn't.
Well,
I
like
know.
put
I
it
know what
this
you're
way.
saying in a way.
I don't buy jerseys of current players for
Mm.
superstitious reasons, but well, partly also too because players leave, and I don't want a jersey of some guy who's not on the team anymore, right? So
Right.
but Lester's not a guy I would have bought a jersey for if I bought jerseys. You know,
That-
I
That's a that's a that's a really good way of putting it
yeah
because I feel the same way. Yep, I know what you mean.
yeah. I mean, not like
Yeah,
if
Poppy,
Oh, Poppy, absolutely. But if I bought
100%.
jerseys, I would have bought a Gomes jersey because and
Right.
um, you know,
I'd buy
and
a Koji jersey. I'd buy
yeah. I mean, even
I'd buy
Koji,
a
I
Brock
feel.
Holt jersey.
Oh, I love Brock Holt. I love this kid. He's
Right.
he's awesome. And Lackey. I thought Lackey's deal was a good deal. I thought
Definitely.
we probably had a little bit more leverage there. I mean, the thing with Lester is a 2 month rental. People know that. People know that we pretty much had to move him. Or we're really looking to move him. We didn't need to move Lackey. We could have sat on Lackey. What was he going to? He has a real team friendly contract with league minimum.
500,000. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
I don't know how that all would have worked out, but uh,
I think they would have offered him an extension for 2 years,
maybe
9 million a year, something like that.
maybe
Because he was pitching really well, and I think that's what they. I don't. I still. I couldn't see the Red Sox going. It's neither here nor there at this point, but I couldn't see the Red Sox keeping him on at 500,000. And having a discontented pitcher. That's just not.
yeah
That's not good business,
yeah. If
in
he
my
was going to be
opinion.
serious
So
that disconnect or whatever upset, then yeah,
right.
and that's partly why I think they moved him. I mean, he obviously asked to be moved. At least that's the reports. And so, but they didn't need to move him, so they were obviously able to have a little bit more leverage against the Cardinals. And what they got back, I mean, Alan Craig, we'll see how that turns out. I mean, he's a good player when
Mm.
he's healthy, but he's getting up there, and he gets injured a lot. With just age and fatigue and so on. So, but when he's healthy, he can contribute, I think. And They got this a pitcher Joe Kelly, who's not a Lester replacement, obviously, but
No,
I think I think he'll be a guy who can be long middle relief, or number 3 4 starter. He's been good when he's been healthy, but not a top of the rotation guy. So he's still someone. He's a solid
no.
guy, and you need those guys, and he can help. I mean, not that
You
he's
do. You need a 3-4-5. I mean,
right, a guy who's going to eat up innings, who can come in and be good and pitch well enough to keep you in games and get you through and eat up some of those innings that we're going to lose because we don't have Lester. So, those are key moves. Now there's some other moves as well. Um, Dubront went to the Cubs, but that I think was more, I don't want to say punishment to Dubront, but it was more, all right, you're done here, and
yeah.
we really, I mean, you know, getting traded to the Cubs is just a step above being designated for assignment. So
Right. What was he? I know he was discontented, but I kept hearing, and I didn't watch the game a week ago. I kept hearing that he quit on the mound. He stunk
it was awful.
a week ago in his
It was
last outing.
awful.
But did you watch it? Why?
Yeah,
Why do I keep hearing that he quit? Do you know why?
I don't know.
How do you quit on the mound? Like, what did he do?
Yeah,
Do you just throw fastballs down the middle and not like?
it seemed that way. I don't know if he
Yeah,
was
he
doing it
was
on
getting hit
purpose.
hard.
Yeah, he was getting shelled,
Yeah,
and he had been moaning about wanting to be a starter, and
yeah,
that he wasn't in a starting role. They had him in relief role. He doesn't like relief role. But like I texted you, it's like, well, dude, don't come in and give up a grand slam
yeah.
if you want to
Freaking
be a
earn it.
starter, right? So
Right. He was a starter all last year. He was a starter to start this year until he stunk.
yeah,
He
well,
got injured and he stunk.
yeah, he
Now
got
you go to the
injured.
bullpen. So
Yeah, you got to
and
work your
he
way
and he
back.
actually he tailed off last year too.
Yeah,
So it's not like the Red Sox had something personal against him,
no,
because you didn't pitch well enough to remain a starter. So you got to earn it, buddy.
and
So
he
good riddance.
he
That
pitched
attitude.
he pitched well times last year, but he definitely you got the sense that he was pitching above his norm. That he was, and so he
Yeah.
was going to come back to more his norm. And you never, I mean, he wasn't a guy you really were like, all right, we got the Bronco tonight. I mean, they were on a roll
Right.
last year. Everybody was clicking on all cylinders last year. So,
Right.
he was playing well, but he's not, he's not a guy you could really count on. They already had shipped off PV to the Giants.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, two trades within the AL East, though. I mean, because we did send
Yeah.
Andrew Miller to the Orioles for
The
uh,
Orioles and then
pitching prospect, and then
and
and
Drew to
Drew
the Yankees for what? What did we get for that?
Kelly Johnson, utility guy.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yep, yep,
and that was weird. I mean, I texted you last because watching the game last night, the Yankees Red Sox game.
yeah.
That must have been weird that you get traded. So on Wednesday he's playing at Fenway in a Red Sox
Right.
uniform. Then he's got to go out on Friday in a Yankees uniform and play in the same field. That
In
just
Fenway.
that
Yeah,
must have been weird. I mean, I guess but they had
yeah.
you know he's got to play in second base because you got to have Derek Jeter
You've
playing
got at
short.
shortstop. Yeah,
Yeah, which is ridiculous. He's the third best shortstop on that team, and he's still shortstop. It's ridiculous.
I know. I know. He's been in that position for 5 years,
Yeah,
just based upon out of respect, I guess. So.
yeah.
But
It's
back, the whole Lester
yeah.
situation. There's so many it's so dynamic. There's so many angles to it, and I want to approach it starting with the initial offer. Let's say back in spring training, prior to spring training in the spring, when the Red Sox made their first offer, 4 years, reportedly 4 years, 70 million.
Yeah.
Now, it's been widely remarked as a lowball offer.
Right.
And it's been perceived that it was such a lowball offer that it drove Lester's side away from the bargaining table. That it was such a shitty offer that his team, his representatives said, "Whoa, and let's back off." They were like insulted or whatever you want to call it. Now, I read a pretty on point analysis, and I'm looking at Lester's career stats. that show that it wasn't actually, if you look at the comps for Jon Lester and other contracts, I don't have them in front of me.
Hmm.
Um, it wasn't that bad of an offer. Uh, if you put Lester in the category of Scherzer, Greinke, Kershaw, the guys who are getting the 6, 7 years north of 150, 180, 200 million, then it looks like a ridiculous lowball offer. But where Lester was performing, let's say Lester didn't go out and pitch so well in the postseason last year and didn't finish last season, regular season, as strongly as he did. His comps up to that point weren't really. He was, he's an above average to very good starter up to that point.
Yeah.
His career stats are not dazzling. His 162 is 1 year average across his career: 15 wins, 9 losses, 3.64 earned run average, which pitching in the American League East, that's pretty good. 195, no, 214 innings, very good. 195 strikeouts, ERA plus of 120, all good stats, but not stats that put you in the Greinke, Scherzer, Kershaw category. So that offer, lampooned as a real lowball offer, maybe in retrospect not quite so bad. So that's the first thing.
Well,
The,
and I
the
think
second thing is,
I
mm,
I just his agents certainly were putting him into the category of Scherzer and the rest and Kershaw,
sure, of course,
and that's what they saw it as. So, and I think some of the pundits in Boston also kind of put him in that same category. And
undeservedly so in
I
some
think so.
ways.
I think so. I mean, it's hard because you look at postseason, and in postseason, in some ways, he's been better than those guys. And
Correct.
whereas in the regular season, he hasn't been. But it's also, the stats for postseason are useless in the sense of being statistics. The sample size is too small. You
Correct.
can't you
But
can't you can't really compare those. Now, he's performed there and you can't take that. I'm not saying you can't that you don't include that and you don't evaluate that. But you can't really look at the statistics and be like, "Oh, well, he's 3-0 in his playoff career." It's like, well, what do you compare that to? Statistics for them to be reliable. I mean, even over 3 week period, you can't rely on statistics in the regular season. I mean, statistics you need a good enough sample size for it to be meaningful at all. So in some ways, the longer term career statistics that go over the whole season are much more important in terms of looking and getting a snapshot of who this guy is. And I think that's important. I mean, now you can fold in the playoff statistics into that. And so it's not that I want to take away at all what Lester's done in the postseason, but like you were saying, I mean, you have to look at the career statistics because that's in some ways tells you more who the guy is than just a tiny sample size of a handful of games in October.
correct. And I'm going to contradict myself with the point I just made. But what matters now, postseason performance tends to, it has with Jon Lester, put him in a higher category of pitcher than his regular season stats would indicate. Okay,
Sure,
so in postseason performance tends to get a lot of attention. It really helps your reputation, et cetera, et cetera.
of course.
But yes, it's a real small sample size, Shawn. But isn't that the sample? Isn't the performance in the postseason what shouldn't it get more weight? Even though it's small sample size, shouldn't it put you in that elite category pitcher? Because that's what really freaking matters. And this is something I want to get back to when we
Well,
talk a little bit later about the Red Sox philosophy. Isn't that what really matters? Is how well you do when the rubber meets the road, when you're
well,
about to win a World Series, when you're in
yes,
the postseason. Like you could be Dan Marino, to go to another sport, and put massive statistics all across your career and never win the big one. Okay, great. Well, then you've got a guy like whatever, Tom Brady.
No, I think
who early in his career won 3 Super Bowls. That's not a very
no,
good
no,
comparison. You're right.
no, compare
Yeah.
it to Eli Manning, because if you were going to start a
Mm,
team
mm,
tomorrow
much better.
and you could choose at the key point of their careers, obviously you wouldn't take Dan Marino today, but if you could choose Dan Marino, in what 1982 or whatever, and Eli Manning in 2007, who are you going to choose?
I'm going to choose Marino
Right, exactly. Why?
because he's a better quarterback.
Exactly. And how do you know that?
Because I've seen him play
In his career statistics. That
and his career
Right,
statistics.
right. So yes, it obviously it matters what happens
See your point.
in the
Yeah.
postseason, and it gets blown up, and it's important. Now, whether it's the most important thing, that's we could have a philosophical debate about what the ultimate point is. Is it only about the postseason, and what if that's the case? What about regular season? But we don't need to get into that here. That may be something more for the sports ethicist pod, but certainly
You always got to drop that in every time, don't you?
I got a plug. I got a plug. Um, so it's
Salesman, you. Yeah, go ahead.
uh, the postseason obviously is important. I mean, whether it's the most important thing, whatever, but it's certainly important, and it's heightened up, and you can talk. Oh well, this is when the rubber meets the road, and your opponents are better, and you're stepping up, and
Yeah.
you get into talk of clutch and
Yeah.
and and being on momentum and stuff. But those things are I, I feel like they're sometimes distorting. There is something to them. I'm not totally going to dispute or dismiss that people can be clutch and that there's something momentum going on at times. But
Poppy.
I think we overdo it. Um, yeah, no, I mean Poppy. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I think there is a sense where some guys are, at least they feel more clutch. I know sometimes when you break it down, it's they're not necessarily. But like take Poppy for instance, it's not necessarily that he's better in those positions. He's good all the time.
Yes.
So it's not
Yes.
that suddenly he's better. He's just good all the time. And I think there is this perception of some guys sort of going up to that next level, taking it more serious, and maybe there's some truth to that. Again, I'm not trying to knock his performance in the postseason because it is more stressful. The competition is better. There is more on the line, and so it's going to be more of a challenge. And so to perform as good or even better than what you normally do is certainly something that's worthwhile, praiseworthy, and worth paying for, right? I mean, and I think that's why you're not just going to pay Lester as an above average pitcher. You're going to pay him closer
Right. So he
to
does get a bit of a premium for that.
absolutely, yeah,
Yes. Yep.
absolutely. Now that doesn't put him in the Kershaw category. It doesn't put him in a
No, it does
Pedro
not.
category, and and
No, it
so
does
it
not.
and so while I'm not going to go with and say that the 70 million, 4 year 70 million, was a reasonable offer, right? I don't now
No.
how low ball was it? We it just it
It
just
wasn't as brutal a low ball offer as it's being made out to be.
yeah,
That's what I'm saying. I'm
sure.
standing on
Not
that.
so much so that it was so offensive of an offer that Lester's representation couldn't turn around and offer something different, offer something
Right.
as ridiculous on the other side. 7 years, 300 million or something like that.
Right. Right.
You know,
Why didn't they?
why
How
didn't
much
they?
blame does Lester and his team deserve for how this negotiations did not? Well, we don't know everything that happened behind the
Of
scenes.
course not. Of course
Um,
not. And we
but
never will.
I think they deserve some of the blame for
Absolutely.
if they did walk away from 4-70 because it was so ridiculous. Well, grow up. This is, these are negotiations. We start somewhere, you start somewhere, we come
Yeah.
to an agreement.
I
Like,
mean,
come on.
there is something about where an offer is so outside the bounds that you're not going to pay attention to it. And
Right, but this was not that.
right. I mean, because yeah, exactly. I mean, when I was selling our house, a number of years ago, so I mean, we'd get offers that were clearly just drive-by offers. They didn't even really look at the house. They drive by and they offer you pennies on the dollar, and they're looking to flip the house or whatever, right? And you just say no right away. You don't even counter those offers because they're not worth the time, right? Uh, but this isn't. I don't think the 4 year, 70 million was quite at that level.
No.
I do think it was a low offer, but uh, I don't I don't think it was that low that they couldn't have turned around and offered a a counter offer, right?
Right.
One that was equally ridiculous on the other side, and then you find a middle ground between there, and you talk. Yeah, I mean, and so I'm not going to talk in terms of blame. That's a little harsh for me. I mean, I think they were making decisions based on what they thought they could get, and certainly the leverage that Lester had the whole time was I can go to free agency and I'm going to get a fantastic deal. I mean, he knows that, right? And that's what's going to happen unless he gets injured, which is always a risk, or he just doesn't perform, which is a possibility. And so I do think that those they had that leverage that they didn't necessarily be that aggressive in the negotiations. But that puts a little bit of a, I don't want to say a lie to, but it does push back on the idea that Lester wanted to stay here more than anything else and was willing to take a hometown discount. Because if that's the case, over the last week, he should have said to the Levinson brothers, whoever whatever their name is,
Yeah.
get the deal
Yeah.
done. This is what I want.
Yeah.
This is the point that this is the range that I think we can get it done with. Get it done, because
Right.
now maybe he did say that, and who knows? But it doesn't seem like that ever happened. That he ever said, "Look, this is what I want is to stay in Boston, and if they can come back with, you know, whatever
These many
this,
years,
these many
this
years,
range
this
of
amount of
dollars,
money,
I will stay.
then I will stay.
Right.
Get it done." And it,
Right.
from all reports, they didn't do that. And
No, and
so
I tend to think that. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, that they didn't do that, and so not that that means he didn't want to stay or anything that he said was a lie, but
I think it's legit that he wanted to stay, but I
yeah,
also think that his representatives and he all along were going to go to free agency unless the Red Sox came up with some semblance of a market level deal, years and money.
right,
And I don't think the Red Sox ever did. And so they were going to go to free agency regardless,
yeah.
unless the Red Sox really stepped up, and they didn't, and they weren't going to. And that gets to the point of I don't think they're going to when he does become a free agent.
Oh,
It's
yeah. I mean
another it's
that
another bunch of hype going on around here, but
that's
yeah.
ridiculous. I mean the idea that
Well,
I do think it's
go
ridiculous, and
ahead.
yeah,
Okay, I
I
don't.
just I think I just don't see because the offers that he's going to be fielding now, if assuming he pitches well enough. Now I don't think Oakland's ultimately going to win the World Series, but assuming that he pitches well enough in the playoffs with Oakland, he's going to be fielding ridiculous offers that are way more than
Hmm.
what they would have had to pay market price right now. And
And some team is going to be stuck with a ridiculous contract
yeah,
with him when he's 35 and he's not the pitcher that he is right now.
absolutely. And I just I don't see the Red now. While the Red Sox going to be in the offer, are they going to throw in
Yes, they are.
absolutely. But I think there's going to be a team now, whether it's the Yankees or the Angels or well, the
Yep.
Angels might not because they're saddled with that Pujols contract. But
Yeah.
someone's going to come out with a ridiculous contract offer, and I just don't see the Red
Yeah.
Sox matching that at that point.
No.
Now
And
the
this is really gonna put a test to whether Lester wants to come back or not. Okay, because the Red Sox are gonna come out with a a good offer. It's not going to be a ridiculous offer like any of the other teams you just listed. The Yankees are going to offer him 7 years, 185 million or something like that. Red Sox are going to offer four with a five, attached to it, incentives, whatever, for 150 or something like that, or 140 or 135, and it's going to be out in the public. And the Red Sox are going to come out looking better if
no,
Lester doesn't take them up on their hometown discount offer.
well, no, I don't think so because I think at that by that point it's it's you're just putting out an offer, and to expect a hometown discount at that point, you know, if another team is offering you that much more money, I don't think anyone's going to blame him for going and going to be like, oh well, I can't believe he didn't come back. He was lying about wanting to come back. Now, if we're in the same ballpark,
Yeah,
you
if it's
know,
close, if it's
if
like
it's
Teixeira
close,
close,
right, then
you know.
that's a little different. But I think,
Yeah, you're right.
I
I
think
might
if
have
you,
over exaggerated that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just don't see it happening unless there's some sort of conspiracy collusion going on
Mm.
where they already have a hypothetical deal in place and he's going to come back and it's they're he's people are going to
Which
love
would
that
make
he's
Ben
coming back.
Sherrington look like the greatest GM of all time.
Right.
And by the way, if something like that happened, that might get the attention of league officials. By the way,
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean I think if that ever came out that would not
yeah.
stand. So
Because he's not staying in Oakland. We just dealt
no.
him to a team that we knew. Not dealt him. Yeah, I'm sorry. We dealt him to a team that we knew wasn't going to sign him. We know
Right.
they can't sign him
They're
in
not going to.
Oakland.
Right. Well,
No.
they oh,
So there's another thing to it
yeah.
that tints looks at conspiracy. But well, no, I'm not a conspiracy person. But
Right. And
like when
even if
John Henry hugged Lester, the pictures like people are saying whispered in his ear, "We're going to get you back," some nonsense like that.
right. I mean,
You know
look, it's not
knows
out of
what Doctor Creepy whispered in his ear, but
I mean, not that it's out of the realm of the possibility. I mean, if you had just like when we talked about LeBron, if you had asked, 2 weeks before that went down, I didn't think that that was even a remote possibility. So,
right.
things can happen. This would be really, really surprising, because I think
Yep.
to get him, they're going to have to offer a contract that they're not willing to offer. That's going to take too many years, uh, and I just don't. It's hard to see unless they offer him so much money on a shorter contract. If they offer him a 4-year contract of I don't know, 4 years,
30 million
uh,
a year
30 million a year, something like that. And that versus someone else who's maybe offering him a 6-year deal, but it's more like 22 a
average
year.
annual 25. All right.
Yeah, then maybe you take the shorter term money. I don't know. You hope that you don't get injured and then that after 4 years you can get another good contract. I don't know. At the same time, it's
Well,
baseball. You get
this
guaranteed contract. If it's more money over the 7-year period, maybe you take that because you want that guaranteed money. In your 30s to get that extra money. So it's a hard thing to balance. I mean, partly
yeah,
it's
yeah.
how well you think you're going to be in 4 years. If you still think you're going to be good and healthy in 4 years, then take the short deal with the big money because you get another good contract.
No, yeah, but any player is going to take the bigger contract because it's more guaranteed money. And you're going to take
Right.
120 million guaranteed dollars. You're going to take 180 million dollar guaranteed dollars, even if the
Yeah.
average annual value is less. You're going
Right.
to take 180 million because it's just more money that you're guaranteed to get. You know what I'm saying? Any human being is going to do that. So unless you're like an egomaniac, oh, I want to be the second highest paid average annual value player, and Lester's not like that.
No, what I'm
I'm pretty
saying
sure he's a
is that
logical, well-grounded individual.
if you're willing to gamble that you can get a second contract after the shorter
Right, I
contract
got you. Yeah,
that will make up
right.
that difference and maybe even more. So, but
Yeah, and again, who's
it's
going
a
to do
big
that?
gamble. Yeah, it's a big gamble,
Right.
and it's probably so unless you or if you're thinking I don't really want to
Well,
play much longer than 4 years or whatever so
yeah,
there's other things that can go into effect there and so that's the only way I really think they see him coming back unless he sucks in Oakland. And then
right. Which is interesting. Would be
but
interesting if he
then
does. Then his value
right.
decreases, and then we're more in
But
the market for him. But
and then why do we want him if he sucks in Oakland? Right?
right, I know.
So
Well, I think this segues very well, Shawn, into what's really running up my ass sideways lately is this organizational philosophy of the Red Sox to not pay players over the age of 30, not give long term contracts to players over the age of 30. I have a
pitchers,
serious
pitchers,
problem with that right now.
pitchers. It's not all players. It's pitchers.
Is it just pitchers? Are you sure it's just pitchers?
I'm not sure, but that seems to be the case.
Well, they gave one to Pedroia.
Right. Exactly.
They gave him eight. They gave him 8 freaking years for whatever it was, 110, 120 million.
Right. So I think
So
it's
okay,
primarily
I've heard it
pitchers.
as players. Okay,
I think it's primarily pitchers because pitchers break down more. There's more damage to their body. They're more unreliable over the long term. It's a bit like a running back in football. They're going to take a beating more than an outfielder or first baseman who can play much longer,
fine,
right?
fine. Why do the Red Sox feel they have to do this? Why is this place for the Red Sox? I could understand if it's in place for the Oakland A's, for the Kansas City Royals, for the Florida Marlins. Why do the Red Sox have to have this philosophy in place? It does not leverage their strongest asset correctly, which is they have a ton of fucking money. Okay, they don't need to do this. They're a team that can afford to carry someone who's 35, 36, 37 at 20 million a year. They can have that sunk cost. They're the Red Sox. They can afford it and still be very competitive. Other teams can't. That's what burns me about it. It's a
Well,
numbers thing.
you're
It's
you're assuming
financial.
you're assuming that they're not going to be competitive with this philosophy. And that's something that I'm not so sure about. I think we'll see next year.
But okay, history shows us, Shawn, that the big contracts have won the World Series. Last year, to the contrary, I think we both can agree that last year was lightning in a bottle. Okay, they won it last year, and I'm scared to death that because they won it last year, they are so much more bought into this new philosophy that
okay,
there's
so
reportedly
but
has been
it,
around
but
this point.
okay, so they other big contract. I'm not saying don't pay the guys a lot of money, right? I get that, and that's fine. And those we paid a lot of those guys a lot of money, but those were not guys that were we were not giving guys. Beckett didn't get a long term, you know, 7 year deal when he was plus 30. You know, Schilling didn't,
No, we extended a
right?
ridiculous amount.
Yeah, and look what happened. And we had to get rid of him,
I
and
know.
so
And look at the Lackey thing. We gave Lackey a bunch of money for a number of years at the age of 32, 33,
yeah,
and look how he's turned out.
yeah,
He stunk early,
yeah.
and
It
he's
looked like
outperformed later on.
it
Tommy
looked
John in the middle,
right.
but it may have been the Tommy John that's making him perform so well right now. That's an interesting topic too, by the way. Tommy John tends to turn pitchers into better pitchers once they come off the surgery.
Well, the
But
statistics are mixed on that. So
well, they are. They are.
yeah.
Yes, they are. But why do they have this philosophy? They got burned by. What did they get burned by?
Well, it's not just them.
Have they been
It's
really
other
burned?
teams. It's not just them. It's other big contracts to pitchers that are 30 31. There is a
But they're
drop
not
off,
other teams, Shawn. They're the Red Sox. They're the Red Sox. They're the Yankees. They're the Dodgers. They're the Cubs.
but just
They're
because
who else? What other
just
Texas
because
Rangers? They're the
if
teams that can afford to do this and win world championships because they can afford to do it. They can afford to get 2 or 3 years of a star pitcher's prime and carry him for a few more years beyond his prime and pay him premium money beyond his prime, but win the World Series while he's in his prime. The Red
well,
Sox can do that and win championships that way.
I
They
think
don't have to have this philosophy.
well,
I
you
don't
know,
want the Red Sox to be competitive every year.
hold on.
They don't have to.
You know, you say that, but first of all, one, I don't know if that's true. That um, that you have to spend and have that dead weight contract. I mean, look, the Yankees have been doing that for more than a decade. They have one championship to show for it, right? Um,
Yes.
how many of the Dodgers have? How many of the Cubs have? Spending a lot of money on free agents that are just maybe at their prime and about to fall out of their prime and giving them big long-term deals is dumb. And just because you have the money to do it doesn't mean you should do it. And I don't think you need to do that. I mean, look, the, I'm not saying you can't you just draw a line in the sand and say, oh well, sorry, you're over 30. I'm not going to give you a contract. But I think you got
Well,
to
it
find
seems
the
that's
right
what they're
balance.
doing.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that they didn't want to go to a fifth or sixth year in his contract. And I really don't have a problem with that because as we've talked about, Lester is the best he's ever going to be right now. Maybe a little bit more into next year, but that's it. He's going to get worse. He's not going to be as good as he is now. And what we've talked about is that he's not a transcendent pitcher. He's not
No.
a Pedro Schilling. I mean, he's a good pitcher. I don't, you know, and he's a great pitcher. And I would have loved to have seen him stay here, but he's not a transcendent guy that I think you bend your rules with. I think he's a guy that you probably can sort of say, look, this is what we want. This is what you're. This is what we see you're providing to our organization, and this is the value that we see it as, and here. And if you think you're worth more, then go get more from somebody else. But this is what you're worth to us, and you have to have that philosophy, the Belichick philosophy, to stay
Why?
competitive because that's what
No, it's
allows you.
not.
That's
There's a
what allows you to
salary
stay.
cap. There's a
There's
salary cap in football. They have to have that philosophy. There's no salary cap in baseball. The Red Sox do not have to have that philosophy to stay competitive. They don't. That's where you and I
well,
disagree.
they
I
there is a
agree with you
luxury
that it's
tax.
not.
There is a luxury
Yeah,
tax,
it's
and
just
look, I mean, look, just because you're making a lot of money uh, doesn't mean that you need to
no, it
piss it
doesn't.
away. I mean, and
No, it doesn't. But I'm not talking about. All right, Lester. Back to what you're saying about Lester. Giving Lester 6 years, 22.5 million, probably would have got it done. It might even get it done in free agency. But Lester is the kind of guy that you would bend your rules for. I think
not for
you
six
think
years.
he's not.
I wouldn't have wanted 6 years.
I would.
Uh,
Look, just because 35, 36, he's not worth 22.5 million, but you're getting him in his prime for 22.5 million when he is worth
no,
it.
we
The
had him
Red
in his
Sox can
prime. We already had him in his prime. His prime
yeah,
is
we had him
done.
underpaid. We're paying him 13 million. We got away on the cheap with him and won a couple World Series at low dollar value. Now we're getting him still in his prime for 22.5 million for a couple 3 years.
Maybe
Okay,
I think
let's
at
agree to
best
that time.
one more year of in his
Nah,
prime.
nah,
No,
no. He's better than that, man. He's in great health. You know, he's really strong. Like I said to you on the phone the other day, text. He's put it all together. Physically, he's still very well intact. There's no history of injury, and mentally, he's got the game really down pat. He's still throwing as well as he's ever thrown. I think he's got pitchers sometimes peak right around now. A lot of
yes,
pitchers in their 30s, once they've figured out how to pitch and they still have the physical tools, really look at Kurt Schilling. You know, in his 20s, he was a mess. He had a world of talent, but he wasn't a pitcher. He was just a dumb thrower who was an off the field mess. Once he put it all together, my goodness, in his 30s and beyond, Randy Johnson could never harness his abilities until he was, I don't know the exact age, but later in his career, he won Cy Youngs up the wazoo, and
right.
as the most
Look,
strike. You know, so
there's a
there are instances
possibility
of
there are possibility that Lester is going to end up like that. I don't think that's the case. I really don't, and I don't think obviously I don't
no.
think the
Those are
management
extremes.
does. Right, and so I see them as saying, look, yeah, if Lester was in going into his prime years, he'd be worth that. But he's not. He's coming out of his prime years.
I
Maybe
don't
still
think
got
he's coming out.
one or two more years there. But why should we pay for 6 years of a guy in his for prime peak status when we're only going to have him for two? That doesn't make any sense. I don't think they should do that. I think that's stupid.
Okay, I think you're underselling his prime and the length of it for one thing to make your argument, and I respect that ability of yours. But um, so I could argue it the other way. Neither of us know how long his prime is going to last.
Of
Okay,
course not. Of course
and
not.
your points about a very valid point about there not being a good track record of teams blowing a ton of money on stupid contracts and winning World Series. You are correct. I still think that you have to spend and you sometimes have to bend. If you have an organizational philosophy, you sometimes have to bend those rules to keep your stars here who you know can win you world championships, as Lester can, as Pedroia has, as Poppy has. Poppy's another case. Now listen, they haven't offered up big long-term contracts to him, but they've offered him quite a bit of money, way above market value for a designated hitter, on his 2 year contracts over the
Sure.
past 3 4 years. That's a bit of a bending of the. I mean, I
Well,
don't
no,
know about the
because
philosophy of that,
right. I
but
mean, I'm
I,
not again, Joe. What I'm saying, I'm not talking about money at all. Throw as much cash on a year basis
I know you're
as
talking about the
it's
years.
the
I know.
years, right? I mean, if they gave Poppy a 6 year deal like 2 years ago,
Well, I wouldn't.
he would
I
be
would,
awful right now.
yeah, he does seem to be motivated by contract
Abs-
drives.
Absolutely, and I think that's only
Yeah.
natural. And it's not that they just
I
like,
know it's
hey,
human nature. I
it's
know.
human nature. I mean, you just you hunger drives people. And if you don't have that hunger anymore, because you, not that this guy's like, hey, I got my money, I don't need to play anymore.
No, it's
No,
not
I don't
like that.
think it's
Some
that at
guys
all.
maybe, but no, for
Yeah,
the
but
most part, no. Right.
I think most of it, it's just you don't have that hunger anymore to drive you to do that extra hour of batting practice, that extra hour of training. That thing that just pushes you that much. There's always an extra mile to go, and having that shorter term deal, knowing that you got to come up for a contract again, is going to push almost anybody. I mean,
And
obviously,
is it a coincidence that Jon Lester's having arguably his best season of his career in a
yeah,
contract year? No, I
yeah,
don't think it's coincidence. I think Lester's as stand up, as well grounded as any individual out there in the game, but he's also having a great year in his contract year.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I know it's human nature, and it's not. No one's immune from it.
Right. Now, look, I mean, I think 4 years for Lester would have been ideal. I would go to a fifth year, you know, team option, whatever. That but I wouldn't go beyond a 5 year. And I think if that was the sticking point, then I think that the Red Sox were right in that regard. And and if as long as the annualized contract, the annualized salary was appropriate for his talent level.
Look,
So
man, baseball is a business. I know that, but it's not a business like Procter and Gamble. They're not accountable to shareholders in the way that a publicly traded company is accountable to shareholders. They're not accountable. Their output, their measure of success is not what they return to shareholders for the most part. Their measure of success is how many championships they win.
right,
And I just question what it comes down to is I tend to think right now the Red Sox are being run by John Henry, who is a numbers hardcore businessman, as is Larry Lucchino. And I tend to think that that philosophy is not, and we're going to disagree on this, that's fine. And I respect your opinion a lot. You made some good points, but I don't, I am not bought in that that is the correct philosophy going forward for us to win more championships because
I
of what I said earlier.
yeah.
That's where I come down to.
I mean, and where I think is I think it is an appropriate way to think about running your team, because I think the way you win championships is you are competitive and are in the playoff tournament every year or every other year,
Okay.
right? On a consistent basis.
Okay.
And
All right.
because any one year in the playoffs is a fluke, right? I think playoffs are fluky by their nature. Even with a series, it's still fluky. You get hot at the right time, you make a run, right? Playoffs, no matter the sport, whatever you're talking about, whether it's football, whether it's hockey, whatever, it's playoffs tend to be fluky. So if you to get a chance to win it all, you have to be there more often than you're not, and get there to the end. And so to do that, you have to build a team for every year, and and you have to be thinking down the road. And if you have a couple contracts that look, yeah, the Red Sox are a rich team. They spend a lot of money. But if 4 or 5 years down the road you have a couple contracts, you can't spend that kind of money because you still are bounded by something, and you still have the luxury tax that you need to worry about. And so there's still, I mean, their money isn't infinite, and it means something to them. And they need to be able to know that 5 years, 4 years, 6 years down the road, they're going to be able to make the moves. They're going to make them competitive and remain competitive every year, even without a salary cap. And I think that that kind of philosophy is the way that you remain competitive year in, year out. And I think that that's the more intelligent way to go. I mean, yeah, you got to bend it here and there a little bit and tweak it. It's not a you're not just using a ruler here. We just oh that's it. I mean, it's got to be a little bit flexible. But I think that overall, I agree with the philosophy, and I think that it's better for them to be stricter about it, and not just be cavalier with years and money at the end of contracts, because I think that's how teams get screwed and you get strapped. Even a rich team can get strapped. I mean, the Yankees are a rich team, but they're strapped with some bad contracts that are are hampering their ability to be competitive.
Are they?
I think so.
I don't think so. Besides Jacoby Ellsbury to ridiculous money.
Teixeira's contract, A Rod's contract, um, you know,
But is
uh,
that why they is the years of the money why they're not competitive right now?
well,
In
well,
fact, they're more competitive than we are this year.
yeah,
They're still in it.
and that's a surprise for many people. One, I mean, look, I mean, I think the fact that the Red Sox are as bad as they are this year is a surprise to most people, right?
Yes.
Um, and whatever you want to chalk it up to, slow start because of various kinds of injuries. Buchholz just not being there. A lot of guys who, just whatever, a championship hangover. I'm still surprised that they have been as bad as they've been. So, I mean, I think that they probably played above themselves last year and they're playing below themselves this year. And whereas the Yankees, I think, are playing above expectations, some of their younger guys have done a little bit better than expected. But look, I mean, they haven't, why are the Yankees so bad? I mean, look, their pitching has been awful.
Yeah.
And
Some of
it,
that's bad luck though with Sabathia. Well, I don't know, luck is the right word,
well,
but
that just gets us
Sabathia.
right back to the point, right? I mean, here they have,
Well, I know that's a contract, but
yeah,
they're saddled with this contract, and he may never pitch again. He may
yeah.
never, if he does, he won't be as effective. But that's not going to stop them from going out and signing Lester for silly money and replacing him the next year, replacing Sabathia with another top flight lefty. That's what I'm
Well,
saying.
we'll see if they actually do that. Look,
Okay.
and I mean, because these teams don't have
In
infinite
recent
amount of money, so
Well, in recent years, the Yankees have given nod to being more responsible, but they don't seem to do it. I don't know. Listen, I don't dis. I'm a logical guy, Sean. I think you know that too, and I
sometimes.
don't disagree. Right, sometimes, and I don't disagree with the logic. Okay, but I I think that it's better that logic is not best suited for their situation. That's what it comes down to. That's my final piece. I'm not gonna, I've said everything I wanted to say, and you know where I stand. I know where you stand, and that's fine. I think that that's a great philosophy if you're working under a hard salary cap, like the Bruins, like the Patriots, the NBA. We're not working under hard salary cap. Yes, they are constrained by certain budgetary considerations, and the money is not infinite, et cetera, et cetera. But
I still think they could have stretched a little bit to get the deal done with Lester, and
I wish they
everybody
would have.
would have been happy. I don't think they needed to go that far. I don't think they needed to go to 6 or 7 years to get it done. I don't think they needed to go to
No,
crazy money. I think had they offered a reasonable offer, had they offered 4 years, 100 million in the spring, they probably would have got a deal
that
done.
might have got it done. I know
I don't know if that would have got it done
it might
specifically,
have,
but I think that would have
but that
that
would have kept things
exactly.
live.
Yeah, that would have
You know,
they would have had a discussion there, and it would have worked. I think that would have worked out, and that's where they dropped the ball. So and once they dropped
yeah,
that ball, they had to trade him, and they got the best I think that they
yeah.
could have gotten. I
They
mean,
got it. Yeah. Hey, I give Sherrington. I love the guy right now. I really do. I'm so glad he's our GM. Like the moves he made at the trade deadline, fantastic. And everything he's come out and said and explaining where the team is going and what he's looking at. The dude's really good. He's really smart. He's really sharp, and gives me a lot of faith that going forward we've got him. Hopefully, gaining more leverage against what I don't like coming from Henry and Lucchino.
hmm
So,
well,
and I'm not advocating. We both agree that the contract for Jacoby Ellsbury,
stupid.
that's
Oh,
a
awful.
stupid contract,
Yeah,
and I'm not advocating spending willy nilly on questionable just to try to load up for a World Series run. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that that philosophy got in the way, I think, of a contract that Jon Lester is somebody, a keystone for the team that I think you could have bent the rules for.
yeah.
That's all I'm saying. So
Well, and I'll say this: I don't think the Red Sox are going to end up in last place in the AL East.
really,
I think they'll end up in third or fourth. Um,
wow, you still think that, huh?
uh-huh.
Shoot,
I look,
wow,
the guys they have called up are exciting. They're dynamic.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
playing for pride.
yeah. You're right.
They're playing for the
Yeah,
future. And
the future. Yeah.
even guys like uh, who aren't necessarily rookies or call ups. I'm thinking like uh, I don't know about Alan Craig but Cepedes and stuff. I mean, they're on a more national stage now. Uh, they want to make their statement. So I think that, and they want to
Well,
show that they
Cespedes is playing for a contract in a lot of ways. He's only
right.
got a year after. He's one more year, and he hasn't. Getting paid 10, 10 and a half million. So he's playing for the big money contract somewhere
Right,
else, maybe. So, and he's getting the perfect ballpark for him, perfect showcase for him on the
right.
national stage now. You know.
Right. So I think you got to they're gonna be a young, scrappy team that's gonna play hard. And I mean, look, the last two games against the Yankees, I've seen that. And Brock Holt and Bogarts and all these
Yeah.
guys are they're ballers and they've come
Yeah,
they're
I
coming to
love it too.
play, and it's
I like it
exciting.
too. And if
In some ways,
yeah, and if they can't,
it's more exciting right now to watch it, even though nothing's on the line for them really, just because it's just you're just going
then
out
a
and
bunch
playing.
of underperforming veterans early in the
Right.
season. I know.
Yeah, it's
I
just
know. I
going out
agree.
and playing some baseball, and it's fun to watch. And they're young, scrappy guys who are playing hard. Farrell, I think, is a good manager, and he's getting them to play.
Yeah.
So, and I think
Yeah.
it's going to inspire some of the other guys to play hard too. So, I think they'll end up winning some games here, and you
Yeah.
know, not
And I'll
really.
tell you what, they've got 100 million on the books, around 100 million on the books for next season, which we know they're not going to go into next season just 100 million. I think they are going to spend, if not for Jon Lester, unlikely for Jon Lester, they're going to spend for a top flight pitcher one way or another.
Yeah.
So I think
Although,
we're going to have a number one ace. I think opening day next year, and maybe a number one A, number two pitcher too in there. So
well, a
I
question
think it'll
that
be exciting to see what they do.
we don't have the time to get into is
Mm.
who the hell is that going to be?
Yeah, I know.
And because the free
Cole
agent.
Hamels.
Yeah, but Coleham, whatever. I don't think he's that good. And
No, okay.
no, and um, when you look at the guys who are going to be out in free agency, they're all plus 30. So, who are you talking about getting that you're gonna have to pay top dollar for? It doesn't, I think at that point you kind of, I mean, that's one way that maybe is a point in your favor for your point is like, look, who are you going to replace Lester with? If you're going to go out and get someone in free agency to replace Lester, you're going to have to pay more than what you were going to have to pay Lester and a guy a known commodity. So I think
No,
is something that certainly counts in your favor. So now maybe it's trading. Maybe they're going to trade for somebody who is 28 or something like that, and that they can make a deal with because they have a strong farm system with a lot of prospects, both pitching and otherwise, and so maybe they can make a trade for somebody, and maybe I think that's more likely that they'll do. I don't think they're
mm.
going to go and sign Scherzer, right, or something like that. I mean,
Mm.
Scherzer's looking for big money, and he's
Yeah, he
30.
turned down 6 and 144. We're not going to go above that for sure.
Yeah, and I
And
mean,
I wouldn't do that for him either.
yeah,
Even
he's
though
30
he's
years
yeah
old.
he's yeah yeah.
I mean, maybe we can get Beckett back. He's only 35, so
He's having a good year, isn't he?
yeah, he's all right. Um,
Yeah,
he was
he's
hurt
got a
for a
good
bunch.
ERA, I think. Uh,
So, and some people talk about James Shields, but he's 33,
yeah,
so I
I
mean,
know, and he's yeah.
yeah, so I don't know people talk about, well, we'll go out, we'll get somebody next year, but I'm still curious about who the hell that's going to be. I'm not really sure. So, um,
Mm.
I'm a little worried about that, but they'll find somebody. And, they got some great, you know, they got some great young guys, and so we'll see. Maybe one of these guys emerges as a really solid guy, and uh, you don't necessarily gonna ride a rookie to a World Series, but if you got a guy who could be a solid two or three, and you go out and you trade for a number one, then you might be able to get something done. So I'm not.
Josh Beckett, an aside here. He is 34 years old. He'll be 35 starting next season.
Yeah,
You know how many career wins he has?
no,
138.
wins
That's
aren't.
not a lot for guys.
Yeah,
Wins, I know wins are overvalued, but his career ERA is 3.87.
okay,
He's had one 20-win season from 2005 through 2009 with Florida and with Boston were his best years. The past 3 years, 7 and 14, 5 and 11, 2 and 3, injuries, injuries, injuries.
yep.
0 and 5 last year.
You
So
know
yeah,
why?
Beckett,
You know why?
he's
Because he's over
why
30.
because he's over 30, John Henry.
Exactly. It's biology. You can't fight it. Well, you
Yeah, well,
can.
Beckett, see,
You can fight it, but you're
yeah,
not allowed to.
right. Well, Beckett wasn't a guy that he always kind of was out of shape, and
Yeah.
for a few years there, he looked like he was the real deal. But certainly later on in his career with the Red Sox, his tenure with the Red Sox, he did not look like the real deal.
No,
So he's not somebody I would have given big money to at all. And when they extended him, it was like,
we were
even I
all
was like,
yeah. None of us
why are
liked
they
that.
doing that?
Yeah, we didn't like it.
Yeah.
All right, well, we got to wrap up here. We're over an hour already. So, we didn't talk anything Patriots camp, but it's not a lot to talk about there. But we do have
Yeah.
Thursday football preseason Thursday
Yeah.
against the Washington Redskins,
Woo.
whatever that team's going to be called. So
Yeah, the Washington,
the Washington
Washington
Foreskin,
football team.
the Washington Foreskin.
Foreskins. Yeah, I just can't wait to see what this secondary, what this defense looks
Yeah,
like, man.
that's going to be
It's going to
exciting.
be, oh, really? Something to look forward to.
So that's probably what we'll talk about next week is talk more Patriots next week because there won't be a lot of Red Sox talk, so it'll be all Patriots.
No.
This has been the Boston Sports Pod.